I stood in the driveway watching my dad and my younger sister Claire load their expensive matching luggage into a hired black car. The summer sun beat down on my neck as my father turned to me with that casual smile he always wore when he was about to say something that would change everything. "You'll be fine on your own," he said, checking his watch, like he had somewhere important to be. He did. The airport. Claire giggled as she slid into the back seat, her new designer sunglasses perched on her head. 2 months in Europe, maybe 3, he'd said earlier. I'd helped fund this trip through my construction job savings, thinking it was for family emergencies. Now I understood. The emergency was that they wanted a vacation without me. The car pulled away, and I watched the taillights disappear around the corner of our quiet suburban street. My chest felt tight. I turned back toward the house, my childhood home, and walked through the front door, into air that already felt different. Empty. Used. I moved through the rooms slowly, taking inventory of what had changed. The good television from the living room was gone. The kitchen had been stripped of anything decent to eat. Just some expired crackers and a half-empty jar of peanut butter sat in the pantry. Even the coffee maker had vanished. My father had packed like he was moving out, not taking a vacation. I climbed the stairs to my old bedroom. The door was open. Half my stuff was missing. I walked to my dresser and pulled open the drawers. Several of my favorite shirts were gone. The nice watch my mom had given me before she died was missing from my nightstand. My laptop charger had disappeared. Claire must have wanted these things, and my father had simply taken them. On my way back downstairs, I stopped at the kitchen counter. A yellow notepad sat there with my father's handwriting scrawled across it. I picked it up and read the list of instructions. Pay all utilities by the 15th of each month. Water the lawn twice weekly. Don't let the grass grow above 3 inches. Keep the air conditioning set to 78 degrees to save money. Don't enter my office under any circumstances. Sign for any packages and store them in the garage. At the bottom, he'd written, "Thanks for watching the house. We'll be in touch." I crumpled the note in my fist. He'd turned me into an unpaid house sitter while they toured Europe on money I'd contributed to what I thought was our family emergency fund. 6 months ago, my father had said we needed to pool resources because of unexpected medical bills. I'd given him $4,000 from my savings. Claire had contributed nothing because she was still in college. Now they were drinking wine in Paris, while I was supposed to mow the lawn and pay the electric bill. I pulled out my phone and called Travis, my best friend since high school. He answered on the second ring. "What's up, man? Can you come over? I need help moving." "Moving? What happened?" "I'll explain when you get here." Travis arrived 45 minutes later in his old pickup truck. He found me in my bedroom, throwing clothes into garbage bags. I told him everything. The fake emergency fund, the Europe trip, the house-sitting instructions, the stolen belongings. "That's messed up," Travis said, shaking his head. "What are you going to do?" "I'm leaving. Right now. I'm not staying here and playing their game." "Where are you going to go? You still have that spare room, right?" Travis grinned. "It's yours. Let's get you out of here." We spent the next 3 hours loading Travis's truck. I took my bedroom furniture, my clothes, my books, my tools from the garage. I went into the attic and found the boxes my father had hidden up there. My mother's photo albums, her jewelry box, letters she'd written, things that belonged to me that my father had tried to keep from me. When the truck was full, I walked back into the kitchen one last time. I took the house key off my key ring and set it on the counter. Next to it, I placed my own note on the same yellow notepad my father had used. "Find your own house sitter. I'm done being used. Don't contact me." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. Travis and I unloaded everything at his apartment across town. The spare room was small, but it was mine. I set up my bed, unpacked my clothes, arranged my mother's photos on the dresser. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. "Want to grab some food?" Travis asked from the doorway. Yeah, that sounds good. We went to the burger place down the street, and I paid for both of us. I had enough money in my account to cover a couple months of rent to Travis, plus my usual expenses. My construction job paid decent money, and I'd been saving carefully. I'd be fine. For 2 days, I felt liberated. I went to work, came home to Travis's apartment, watched television, without my father making passive-aggressive comments. I slept better than I had in years. On the 3rd day, my phone started buzzing during my lunch break at the construction site. Text after text from my father. Missed call after missed call. I ignored them. Then my phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Account balance: negative $8,217. I stared at the screen, certain it was an error. I logged into my bank's website on my phone. The transaction history loaded slowly, and then I saw it. A withdrawal from 3 days ago. The same day my father had left for Europe. $12,000, withdrawn from an account I thought held about $4,000. I called the bank immediately. A customer service representative named Donna answered, and I explained the situation as calmly as I could manage. Sir, I'm showing that withdrawal was made by a joint account holder. Your father, correct? Yes, but he didn't have permission to take that money. I understand your frustration, but legally, any joint account holder has full access to all funds in the account. The withdrawal wasn't fraudulent from our perspective. He drained my entire account while he was in another country. That has to be illegal. I'm very sorry, but unless you can prove coercion or undue influence, there's nothing the bank can do. This is a civil matter. You would need to pursue it through small claims court. My hands were shaking. What about all these overdraft fees? I didn't make these withdrawals. Those are from automatic payments that tried to process after the account balance went negative. Your rent check, your car payment, your credit card payment, those all bounced. The fees are standard policy. I hung up and sat in my truck in the construction site parking lot. My rent check to Travis had bounced. My car payment had bounced. My credit card payment had bounced. In 72 hours, I'd gone from financially stable to buried in debt and fees. My father had taken everything and left me with nothing but penalties. I tried to call him, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent a text. You stole my money. Put it back now, or I'm taking legal action. 3 hours later, he responded. That was family money in a family account. I needed it for emergencies. Stop being dramatic. We'll discuss this when I get back. I called Travis and told him what happened. He was furious on my behalf. Don't worry about the rent check, he said. We'll figure it out when you get paid next. This is temporary. But it wasn't temporary. The overdraft fees kept piling up. My credit card company called about the missed payment. My car loan servicer sent a threatening letter. Every automatic payment I'd set up had failed, and each failure cost me another $35. By the end of the week, I was negative $9,000 once you added up everything I owed. My father had destroyed me financially in a single transaction from a cafe in Rome. I spent the weekend researching my options. Small claims court in our county had a limit of $10,000, which meant I could technically file against my father for the money he took. The filing fee was $175. Money I didn't have, but money I'd have to find. On Monday morning, I went to the bank before work and closed the joint account. They transferred my negative balance to a new individual account in my name only. At least my father couldn't take anything else. I picked up extra shifts at the construction site. My boss, Frank, was a good man in his 50s who'd been running the company for 20 years. When I explained that I needed more hours, he didn't ask questions. He just nodded and put me on the schedule for 6 days a week instead of 5. The work was hard. We were building a new shopping center on the south side of town, and the summer heat made every task exhausting. But I needed the money desperately. Every extra hour meant another $23 before taxes. Every dollar meant I was closer to digging myself out of the hole my father had created. After my first week of extra shifts, I had enough to file the small claims court paperwork. I went to the courthouse on my lunch break and filled out the forms. The clerk told me a process server would attempt to deliver the summons to my father when he returned from Europe. The court date would be set for approximately 60 days out. "What if he doesn't come back?" I asked. "Then we issue a bench warrant if he fails to appear," the clerk said. "But most people show up. They don't want a judgment against them." I left the courthouse feeling like I'd finally done something proactive. I'd fought back. The legal system would make this right. That feeling lasted exactly 4 days. I arrived at the construction site on Friday morning to find Frank standing by his truck with his arms crossed. The other guys were already working, but Frank gestured for me to come over. "We need to talk," he said. My stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" "I got a call yesterday. From your father." Everything stopped. "What did he say?" "He said you stole from him. Money and property. Said you'd been acting unstable and he was worried about you. He wanted to know if I'd noticed any strange behavior. Said he was concerned you might be dangerous." "That's a lie. He's the one who stole from me." Frank held up his hand. "I believe you, Pedro. I do. But I've got a business to run, and I've got other clients and workers to think about. Your father made it sound like there might be legal trouble coming. He mentioned police reports and lawyers. I'm the one who filed a lawsuit against him. He's trying to discredit me before the case even starts." "I understand. But until this gets sorted out, I need to reduce your hours. I can't have drama affecting the job site. You understand, right?" I understood perfectly. My father had called my employer and poisoned the well. He'd painted himself as a concerned parent, and me as an unstable thief. Frank was protecting himself and his business, which I couldn't even blame him for. But it meant I was losing the extra income I desperately needed. "How many hours?" I asked. 3 days a week for now. When things settle down, we'll revisit it. 3 days a week. That was a 60% cut in my income right when I needed money the most. "Okay," I said quietly. I worked that day, but I could feel the difference. The other guys on the crew kept their distance. A couple of them wouldn't make eye contact. Word had spread quickly. Frank had probably mentioned the call to a few people, and those people had told everyone else. Now I was the guy with drama, the guy whose father had called the boss with concerns, the unstable guy. I went home to Travis's apartment and checked my phone. My father had been busy. I had messages from my Aunt Karen saying she was disappointed in me and didn't want to hear from me until I apologized to my father. My Uncle Richard had sent a brief text saying family matters should stay private, and I was making a mistake by involving the courts. My cousin Dana had blocked my number entirely. My father had spent his vacation in Europe systematically calling every relative we had, telling them his version of the story, that I'd stolen from him, that I'd abandoned him, that I was mentally unwell and acting erratically, that he was hurt and confused by my behavior. No one had called me to ask for my side. They'd simply believed him and cut me off. I sat on the edge of my bed in Travis's spare room and realized I'd lost my family, my reputation at work, and 60% of my income in a single week. My father's counterattack had been swift and devastating, and he was still in Europe, drinking wine and posting photos of the Colosseum. I needed my sister to tell the truth. Claire had been there when my father asked me for money for the emergency fund. She'd been there when he planned the Europe trip. She knew what had really happened. I opened Instagram and found Claire's profile. She'd been posting constantly from the trip, photos of herself in front of the Eiffel Tower, holding gelato in Florence, posing on a gondola in Venice. Her captions were full of gratitude toward our father for this amazing opportunity. I sent her a direct message. "Claire, I need you to tell Dad to return my money. He took everything from my account while you guys were traveling. I'm in serious financial trouble and he won't respond to me. Please help." She read the message immediately. The little scene notification appeared, but no response came. I waited an hour, then 2, then a full day. Finally, 3 days later, Claire responded. Pedro, I don't know what you're talking about. Dad said you got upset and moved out because you were jealous of our trip. He's really hurt by how you've been acting. Maybe you should apologize and work things out when we get home. This trip has been so amazing and I don't want family drama ruining it. I read her message twice, unable to believe what I was seeing. She was dismissing everything, pretending she didn't know about the stolen money, acting like I was the problem. I took screenshots of my bank statements showing the withdrawal and the overdraft fees. I took screenshots of the timeline showing exactly when my father had drained the account. I sent them all to Claire with a detailed explanation. This is what he did. Look at the dates. He took $12,000 from our joint account the day you left. I contributed $4,000 of my own money to what he said was an emergency fund, and he spent it on your vacation. I'm not jealous. I'm broke. I lost my job hours because of this. I need you to back me up. She read the messages, the screenshots, the bank statements, then nothing. For 2 days, silence. On the third day, I was at the construction site when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Notifications from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I put down my tools and checked my phone. Claire had posted a long public statement on Instagram. It had already been shared hundreds of times. I need to address something that's been happening. My brother has been harassing me during my trip with my dad. He's been sending me aggressive messages, accusing our father of stealing from him. This is completely false. The truth is that my brother has been struggling with some personal issues, and he stole money and belongings from our dad before we left. When our dad confronted him about it, my brother moved out and has been trying to turn me against our own father. I'm sharing this because I want people to know that financial abuse can come from anywhere, even from family members you trust. I'm supporting my dad through this difficult time, and I'm asking my brother to please get help and stop harassing us. Attached to the post were screenshots of our private conversation, my messages, my bank statements, everything I'd sent her in confidence. But she'd cropped and edited them to remove context, to make it look like I was making wild accusations, like I was unstable. The post had 900 likes and hundreds of comments. People calling me terrible names. People saying I should be ashamed. People praising Claire for speaking out about family abuse. Someone had tagged the construction company in the comments. Does your company know you employ someone who steals from elderly parents? My phone rang. It was Frank. Pedro, I just saw something on social media. Please tell me this isn't real. It's not what it looks like. She edited the messages. She took everything out of context. I've got clients calling me. I've got comments on our business page. I can't have this associated with our company. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go. Frank, please. I need this job. None of what she posted is true. I believe you might have your side of the story, but I can't take the risk. Clear out your locker today. I'll mail your final check. He hung up. I stood in the middle of the construction site with my phone in my hand and my entire life collapsing around me. Other workers were staring at me. A couple of them had their phones out. They'd seen the post. I grabbed my things from my locker and left without saying goodbye to anyone. By the time I got back to Travis's apartment, Claire's post had been shared over 2,000 times. Local Facebook groups in our area had picked it up. Community pages were discussing it. My name and face were everywhere, attached to words like elder abuse and thief and financial predator. I had $300 in my bank account, no income, and my reputation was destroyed. My father and sister had turned me into a public villain while vacationing in the French Riviera. Travis found me sitting on the floor of his spare room that evening. I hadn't moved in 2 hours. I was scrolling through the comments on Claire's post, reading every terrible thing people were saying about me. You need to stop looking at that, Travis said gently. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. Everyone who matters knows the truth. I know the truth. Your real friends know the truth. I don't have a job anymore. I can't pay you rent. We'll figure it out. But we both knew there was only so long Travis could carry me. He had his own bills, his own life. He was being an incredible friend, but I couldn't live in his spare room indefinitely without contributing. Over the next week, I applied to 23 different jobs. Retail positions, warehouse work, landscaping companies, anything that would hire me. But my name was poisoned. 3 employers specifically mentioned during phone screenings that they'd seen concerning information online. 2 others simply never called me back after I submitted applications with my name attached. I was unemployable in my own town. I had to sell my truck, a 2012 Ford that I'd bought 3 years ago and maintained carefully. I loved that truck, but I needed cash immediately to pay off some of the overdraft fees and late charges that were still accumulating. I sold it to a used car dealer for $4,000. Less than it was worth, but I didn't have time to wait for a private buyer. The money gave me a tiny cushion but also left me without transportation. Now I was riding a bicycle in the July heat to job interviews that went nowhere. Travis's landlord started asking questions. Someone had sent him Claire's Instagram post. He called Travis and said he was uncomfortable with the situation. Travis defended me, but I could hear the strain in his voice. His housing was being threatened because of me. "I'll find somewhere else," I told Travis one night. "No, you're staying here. My landlord will get over it." But the landlord didn't get over it. He sent Travis a formal letter saying that any unauthorized long-term guests would result in lease termination. I started sleeping on other friends' couches. 2 nights at my friend Brad's place. 3 nights at my old coworker Marco's apartment. 1 night at my friend Jessica's house before her roommate complained. I was wearing out my welcome everywhere. I had a duffel bag of clothes and nowhere permanent to live. My father and Claire posted photos from Monaco. They'd extended their trip again, 3 months in Europe now. They looked tanned and happy. I was 1 step away from being homeless. On a Wednesday evening in late July, I rode my bicycle back to my father's house. I needed to pick up 1 last box of my mother's belongings that I'd forgotten in the attic. Letters she'd written to me as a child, stored in an old shoebox. I wanted them before my father found them and threw them away or gave them to Claire. I expected the house to be empty. Instead, there was a car in the driveway. A young guy, maybe 20 years old, answered the door when I knocked. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm Pedro. This is my father's house. Who are you?" "Oh, you're the son. I'm Jason. Your dad hired me to house sit while he's away." My vision tunneled. "He hired you?" "Yeah. He's paying me $2,000 for the summer. Pretty sweet gig, honestly. I just have to water the plants and get the mail. $2,000. My father had paid someone to do exactly what he'd expected me to do for free after he'd stolen my money to pay for his vacation. "I just need to grab something from the attic," I said. "Sure, come in." Jason seemed like a decent kid. A college student trying to make money over the summer. He offered me a soda while I went upstairs. When I came back down with the shoebox, he was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop. "Your dad seems pretty cool," Jason said. "He calls to check in every few days. Make sure everything's okay with the house." "Yeah, he's real thoughtful." Jason picked up on my tone. "Everything okay between you guys?" I shouldn't have said anything, but I was exhausted, broke, homeless. And this kid was sitting in my childhood home earning $2,000 from the man who'd destroyed my life. He stole $12,000 from my bank account to pay for that trip, I said. "That's why I moved out." Jason's face changed. "Wait, seriously? Ask him about it when he calls next. That's messed up." "I'm sorry, man." I shrugged and headed for the door. But Jason called after me. "Hey, Pedro. Your dad actually had me do something kind of weird last week." I turned back. "What do you mean?" "He called me and asked me to go into his office. He needed me to scan some documents and email them to him. bank statements, and legal papers. He was really specific about which files. Did you keep the emails? Yeah, they're still in my sent folder. Why? Can I see them? Jason pulled up his email and showed me the thread. There were 3 messages from my father with detailed instructions about which documents to scan. But it was my father's response to Jason's email that made my heart rate spike. Thanks for sending these. I've taken care of the money situation with Pedro. He won't be a problem anymore. I've secured the funds for our extended stay in Monaco. Appreciate your discretion on this. I read it 3 times. This was written evidence. Proof that the theft was premeditated and malicious. Proof that my father knew exactly what he was doing. Can you forward these to me? I asked. Sure, what's your email? Jason sent me the entire thread. I saved it immediately to 3 different places. Would you be willing to testify about this if it came to that? I asked. In court? Jason hesitated. I mean, I don't want to get in the middle of family stuff. This isn't family stuff. This is theft. He stole from me, and he's bragging about it in writing. Let me think about it, okay? But yeah, if you really need me to, I'll tell the truth about what he asked me to do. I thanked Jason and left. For the first time in weeks, I had hope, real, tangible evidence that could prove my case. An email where my father explicitly admitted to taking my money and using it for his extended vacation. But I still had nowhere to sleep that night. I still had no job. I still had less than $200 to my name. I had the key to proving my innocence, but I couldn't afford the lock it fit into. I found a legal aid clinic through an online search. They offered free consultations on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I showed up on a Thursday morning with printed copies of Jason's emails, my bank statements, and a timeline of everything that had happened. The attorney who met with me was a woman in her early 30s named Beth. She had sharp eyes and she listened to my entire story without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. This is a clear case of financial exploitation, she said. The email evidence is particularly damning. Your father essentially confessed in writing. Can you help me? I'm building my portfolio in family law and financial abuse cases. I'll take this pro bono. You can't pay me anyway, right? Right. Then, let's go after him. Over the next week, Beth worked fast. She filed an emergency motion to freeze any remaining joint assets between me and my father. She filed formal defamation charges against both my father and Claire for the social media posts. She filed a police report for theft by deception. The police told us that financial crimes between family members were difficult to prosecute, but they took the report and assigned a case number. Beth said that was enough to establish a record. She also contacted Jason and asked him to provide a sworn affidavit about the emails and what my father had instructed him to do. Jason agreed over the phone. He seemed genuinely bothered by what he'd learned about my father's behavior. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a real chance. Beth was smart, organized, and motivated. She believed me completely. She saw through my father's manipulation, and she was building a real case. I found work through a day labor service. Every morning at 6, I'd show up at their office, and they'd assign me to different job sites: construction, moving furniture, warehouse loading. The work was grueling and unpredictable, but it was cash under the table at the end of each day. I made enough to rent a room at a weekly rate motel on the edge of town. The place was rough, stained carpets, flickering lights, sirens most nights. But it was shelter. It was mine. I could lock the door and sleep without imposing on friends. Every dollar I made went to basic survival. Food, the motel room, laundry. I was living day to day, but Beth gave me hope that this would end soon. The court date was set for mid-September. Beth filed all the necessary paperwork. We had Jason's emails. We had my bank records. We had the timeline. We had everything we needed to prove that my father had deliberately stolen from me and then destroyed my reputation to cover his tracks. Then my father and Claire came home early. They weren't supposed to return until late September. But in mid-August, I got a notification that Claire had posted from a location in our hometown. They were back 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I found out why when Beth called me the next day. "Your father has hired an attorney," she said. "A good one. Expensive." "How do you know?" "Because his attorney just filed a response to our lawsuit. They're not just defending, they're countersuing." "For what?" "Defamation, harassment, emotional distress. They're claiming you've made false accusations against your father and caused your sister severe emotional harm. They're asking for $50,000 in damages." I sat down hard on the motel bed. "I don't have $50,000. "I know. This is a scare tactic. They're trying to make you drop the case." "What do we do?" "We fight it. We have the evidence. We have Jason's testimony. We're in a strong position." But 2 days later, Beth called again. Her voice was different this time. "We have a problem." "What happened?" "Jason isn't going to testify." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "His parents received a check from your father for $10,000. For damages you allegedly caused to the property when you trespassed to retrieve your belongings." "I didn't cause any damages. I just picked up a box from the attic." "I know. But your father sent the check with a letter threatening to sue Jason's family if they didn't accept it as settlement for the trespassing incident. Jason's parents deposited the check, and they're pressuring Jason to sign an affidavit stating that you trespassed, threatened him, and that the emails he sent you were taken out of context. He can't do that. Those emails are evidence. He already did. His attorney sent me the affidavit this morning. Jason states that he felt pressured by you, that he didn't understand what he was sending, and that your father's email was a private family matter he shouldn't have shared." I couldn't speak. My smoking gun evidence had just evaporated. My father had paid off the only witness who could corroborate my story. "Can we still win without Jason?" I asked. "It's going to be much harder. Right now, it's your word against your father's. He has better lawyers and more resources. And his daughter is backing his version of events. The bank records show the withdrawal was legal since you were joint account holders. The social media posts are protected speech. Without Jason's testimony about your father's admission in the email, we don't have much." The hearing was in 1 week. I'd gone from having a strong case to having almost nothing. And now I was facing a countersuit for $50,000 that would financially ruin me for the rest of my life. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning, at 9. I showed up in dress clothes I'd borrowed from Travis. Beth met me outside the courtroom looking professional but worried. "Remember, stay calm no matter what they say," she told me. "Don't react emotionally. Just answer the questions directly." My father arrived 15 minutes later, wearing an expensive dark suit. Claire walked beside him in a conservative dress, looking nervous. Behind them was their attorney, a man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive briefcase. We entered the courtroom and sat on opposite sides. I could feel my father's eyes on me, but I didn't look at him. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the case files while we waited in silence. "This is a hearing for a civil claim of financial exploitation and theft by deception," the judge said. "I've reviewed both the complaint and the counterclaim. Let's proceed." Beth went first. She presented my bank statements showing the withdrawal. She presented the timeline showing that my father had taken the money the day he left for Europe. She presented the overdraft fees and the cascading financial damage. "Your Honor, this is a clear case of financial abuse," Beth argued. "The defendant used his position as a joint account holder to drain his son's savings while traveling abroad. He then launched a campaign of character assassination to discredit his son when challenged." My father's attorney stood up. He was smooth and confident. "Your Honor, this is a family dispute that has been blown out of proportion. The account in question was a joint family account. My client contributed significantly to that account over the years. When he needed funds for a family trip, he withdrew money that was legally his to withdraw. His son's reaction has been extreme, and frankly concerning. He presented his own evidence. Bank statements showing deposits my father had made to the account years ago. Emails between my father and Claire discussing their concern about my mental state. Character references from relatives saying my father was a responsible, caring parent. Then Claire took the stand. She looked small and frightened. Her voice shook as she testified. "My brother has been different since our mom died," she said quietly. "He's been angry, bitter. When my dad planned this trip for us, Pedro got jealous. He said terrible things. He accused my dad of stealing, and then he moved out in the middle of the night. He took things that didn't belong to him. Since then, he's been harassing me online, sending me threatening messages, trying to turn me against my own father. I'm scared of what he might do." She was crying by the time she finished. It was a performance worthy of an award. Every word was calculated. Every tear was strategic. Beth cross-examined her, but Claire stuck to her story. Yes, she'd edited the screenshots before posting them publicly, but only to protect her privacy. Yes, she knew her post would damage my reputation, but she felt she had to speak the truth. No, she didn't think her father had done anything wrong. The judge listened carefully, taking notes. I testified next. I told my side of the story as clearly as I could. The fake emergency fund, the theft, the house-sitting instructions, the destroyed reputation. Beth asked me about Jason's emails, but without Jason to corroborate. It just sounded like I was making claims I couldn't prove. My father's attorney tore into me on cross-examination. "Isn't it true that you've been unemployed for over a month?" he asked. "Yes, because my father called my employer and lied about me. Or because you were fired for legitimate performance issues." "That's not what happened." "Isn't it true that you have a history of financial irresponsibility?" "No. You sold your truck recently, correct? Why would a financially stable person need to sell their primary vehicle? Because I had no money. Because my father stole it. Or because you spent it unwisely and needed quick cash." It went on like that for 20 minutes. Every answer I gave was twisted. Every fact was reframed to make me look unstable, irresponsible, and vindictive. When we broke for lunch, Beth looked exhausted. "How do you think it's going?" I asked. "Not well." The judge seemed skeptical. "Without Jason's testimony, we're just not strong enough." The afternoon session continued with character witnesses. My father's attorney called my Aunt Karen, who testified that my father had always been a loving parent and that I'd always been the difficult child. He called a neighbor who said my father was a pillar of the community. He called Claire's college roommate who said Claire had confided in her about how worried she was about her brother's mental health. Beth called Travis, who testified that I'd been responsible, reliable, and clearly the victim of financial abuse. But Travis was just one voice against a chorus of people saying the opposite. At 4 p.m, the judge called for a recess. "I need time to review all the testimony and evidence," she said. "I'm continuing this hearing to a date 2 weeks from now. Both parties will be notified of the new date. Court is adjourned." I left the courthouse feeling hollow. I'd lost. I knew I'd lost. The judge hadn't said it yet, but I could see it in her face. She thought I was a troubled son making accusations against a well-meaning father. My father and Claire left in a Mercedes. I left on my bicycle. That evening, I was sitting in my motel room when I got a message on Facebook from someone I didn't know. A woman named Angela. "I saw the news coverage of your courthouse hearing today. I need to talk to you. Your father did the same thing to my son 20 years ago." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Who are you?" "I'm your father's first wife. The one he never told you about." I called the number she included in the message. Angela answered immediately. She told me a story that made my blood run cold. 23 years ago, she'd been married to my father. They'd had a son together named Marcus. When Marcus was 19, my father had done exactly what he'd done to me. Drained a joint bank account. Used the money for a trip with his girlfriend at the time. someone he'd been seeing behind Angela's back, turned the family against Marcus, painted Marcus as unstable and ungrateful. Marcus had been destroyed by it. He'd ended up homeless for a while. He'd struggled with depression. He and my father had never reconciled. "I've been keeping documentation for years," Angela said. "Court records from our divorce, bank statements, letters. I always hoped I could use them to prove what kind of man he really is." "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Because Marcus asked me not to. He wanted to move on. Forget. But when I saw your case in the news, I called him. He's 42 now, stable, married. He finally agreed to speak up. He doesn't want your father doing to you what was done to him. What do you have? Everything. And I know 3 other people your father has done variations of this to over the years. Business partners, other relatives. He has a pattern. We can prove it." Angela introduced me to her son, Marcus, through a video call that night. Marcus looked tired, but determined. "Your father is a narcissist and a con artist," Marcus said. "He finds people who trust him, and he uses them until there's nothing left. Then he destroys their credibility, so no one believes them when they speak up. I should have spoken up years ago. I was too ashamed. But I'm ready now." Angela connected me with 2 other victims. A former business partner named Gary, who'd lost $30,000 in a deal my father had sabotaged. A cousin I'd never met named Linda, who'd been cut out of our grandmother's will after my father convinced the grandmother that Linda was trying to take advantage of her. Beth was electrified when I told her what I'd found. "This changes everything," she said. "Pattern evidence. Multiple victims. This proves your father's behavior isn't a one-time family dispute. It's a documented history of financial manipulation and character assassination." We filed an emergency motion to introduce new evidence. We submitted declarations from Angela, Marcus, Gary, and Linda. We submitted the old court records from Angela's divorce that showed my father's previous financial misconduct. The judge agreed to hear the new evidence at the continued hearing, but we had to wait 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks of living in the motel. 2 more weeks of day labor jobs. 2 more weeks of surviving on hope and anger. My father's attorney tried to block the new evidence, arguing it was prejudicial and irrelevant, but the judge allowed it, saying that pattern evidence was admissible in civil cases involving fraud and exploitation. The new hearing was scheduled for early September. This time, I wouldn't be walking in alone. The 2 weeks before the second hearing were the longest of my life. I worked every day labor job I could find, loading trucks, painting houses, digging trenches. The work kept me busy and kept money coming in, even if it was barely enough to cover the motel and food. Angela called me several times to check in. She and Marcus were preparing their testimony. Gary and Linda were doing the same. Beth was working around the clock to organize everything into a compelling narrative. My father's attorney tried to intimidate me with threatening letters, demands for depositions I couldn't afford to attend properly, motions to dismiss, accusations of collusion with Angela. But Beth fought back on every front. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the motel bed staring at the water-stained ceiling, wondering if this would actually work, if justice would actually happen, or if my father's money and lawyers would win again. At 7 in the morning, I got dressed in the same borrowed clothes and rode my bicycle to the courthouse. Angela, Marcus, Gary, and Linda were already there. They'd driven in from different cities to testify. When they saw me, Angela hugged me like I was her own son. "We've got this," she said. "He can't hide anymore." The courtroom was more crowded this time. Word had spread. There were reporters in the back, community members who'd seen the earlier coverage and wanted to see how it ended. My father and Claire arrived with their attorney. My father's face was tight with anger. Claire looked pale and nervous. The judge entered, and we all stood. "This is a continuation of the hearing for the case of Pedro Martinez versus Richard Martinez," the judge said. "We're here to consider new evidence regarding pattern behavior. Let's proceed. Beth called Angela first. Angela was calm and articulate. She explained her marriage to my father, the financial abuse her son had suffered, the tactics my father had used. She presented bank records, court documents, and letters that corroborated everything. My father's attorney tried to object, claiming the old divorce was irrelevant, but the judge overruled him. "This speaks directly to character and pattern," the judge said. "I'll allow it." Marcus testified next. He was nervous but honest. He described what it had been like to be 19 years old and suddenly penniless because his father had stolen from him, how he'd been homeless, how he'd been painted as crazy and unstable, how it had taken him years to rebuild his life. "I didn't want to testify," Marcus said quietly. "I wanted to forget this part of my life. But when I saw what he was doing to Pedro, I realized that staying silent makes me complicit. My father is a predator. He targets people who trust him. He needs to be stopped." Gary testified about the business deal. Linda testified about the manipulation around our grandmother's will. Each testimony added another layer to the pattern. My father's attorney tried to discredit them. He suggested they were all colluding, that this was a coordinated attack by disgruntled people who had their own failures to account for. But the documentation was too strong. The pattern was too clear. Beth presented a timeline showing my father's behavior over 25 years. 5 different victims, the same tactics every time. Manipulation, theft, and then character assassination when confronted. "Your Honor, this isn't a family dispute," Beth argued. "This is a serial predator who happens to target family members and close associates. Pedro is just the latest victim in a long line. The evidence is overwhelming." The judge listened carefully, asking questions, reviewing documents. She called a brief recess to review everything in her chambers. When she returned, her expression had changed. "I've reviewed all the testimony and evidence presented today," she said. "I find the pattern evidence compelling and credible. Mr. Richard Martinez, you have engaged in a systematic course of financial exploitation and defamation against multiple individuals over many years. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Pedro Martinez." I felt the air leave my lungs. The judge continued. "Mr. Richard Martinez, you are ordered to repay Pedro Martinez the full amount of $12,000 withdrawn from the joint account, plus all associated overdraft fees, late charges, and legal costs incurred as a result of your actions. The total judgment is $18,300. Additionally, I am issuing a restraining order preventing you from contacting Pedro Martinez directly or indirectly for a period of 5 years. She turned to Claire. "Miss Claire Martinez, while I understand you were influenced by your father, you used social media to defame your brother in a public forum. You are ordered to remove all posts related to this matter and issue a public correction stating that the accusations you made were false. You will also contribute $5,000 to the judgment as damages for the reputational harm you caused." Claire started crying. My father's face was red with rage. "Furthermore," the judge said, "I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for review of possible criminal charges related to theft by deception and fraud. This behavior goes beyond a civil dispute." She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed forward with questions. Angela hugged me. Marcus shook my hand. Beth was grinning. My father stormed out with his attorney. Claire followed, sobbing. I stood there in shock, barely able to process what had just happened. I'd won. The next few weeks moved quickly. My father's attorney tried to appeal, but the judge's ruling was solid. The judgment stood. My father was forced to liquidate some assets to pay me. The check arrived via certified mail, $18,300. I deposited it and sat in the bank parking lot, staring at my account balance for 10 minutes. I was solvent again, more than solvent. I had enough to start over properly. Claire removed her social media posts and issued the correction the judge had ordered. I made serious accusations against my brother that were not true. I was manipulated into posting false information. I apologized to Pedro for the harm I caused. The post got almost as much attention as her original accusation. The community narrative flipped. The people who'd condemned me started apologizing. The Facebook groups that had shared Claire's original post now shared the correction. My name was clearing. Frank from the construction company called me. I saw the news. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. If you want your job back, you've got it. With a raise. I thanked him, but told him I had other plans. I used part of the judgment money to rent a small apartment. Not fancy, but mine. Clean, safe, quiet. I used another part to start my own small handyman and construction business. I knew the work. I was good at it. And now I had the capital to buy tools and advertise. Marcus, Angela's son, reached out a few days after the hearing. If you ever need help with the business, let me know. I do contracting work. Maybe we could partner on some jobs. We met for coffee and talked for 3 hours. He understood what I'd been through in a way no one else could. We decided to partner up. 2 survivors, building something new together. The business grew slowly, but steadily. Word spread that we were reliable, honest, and skilled. We got referrals. We hired a couple of workers. By the end of the year, we were making steady income. The district attorney did file criminal charges against my father for theft and fraud. The case was still pending, but the threat of it hung over him. His reputation in the community was destroyed. People who'd once thought he was respectable now crossed the street to avoid him. I never spoke to him again. The restraining order made that easy. I had no interest in reconciliation or closure. Some people don't deserve forgiveness. Some relationships are too toxic to salvage. Claire tried to reach out a few months later. She sent me a long email apologizing, explaining that our father had manipulated her, that she hadn't understood what she was doing. I read the email once and then deleted it. Maybe one day I'd be ready to talk to her, but not yet. The wounds were too fresh. I kept in touch with Angela and Marcus. They became my real family. Angela invited me to holidays. Marcus and I grabbed beers after long work days. These were people who understood loyalty, honesty, and integrity. Travis remained my best friend. I never doubted you, he'd said after the hearing. Not once. Beth, my attorney, became a friend too. She'd fought for me when I had nothing to offer in return. That kind of integrity is rare. One evening in late fall, I was sitting in my apartment, looking at my mother's photo albums. The ones I'd rescued from my father's attic. Pictures of her smiling, holding me as a baby, teaching me to ride a bike. She would have been proud of how I'd fought back, how I'd survived, how I'd built something real from the wreckage my father had left. I learned a lot from this nightmare. I learned that family isn't defined by blood but by loyalty and character. The people who stood by me when I had nothing, those are my real family. I learned that abusers often have a history. My father had been doing this for decades. I wasn't special. I was just the latest target. But by speaking up and fighting back, I'd helped expose him. Marcus told me that Gary and Linda both felt empowered to pursue their own cases against my father now. His pattern was finally catching up to him. I learned that sometimes the system does work, but only if you refuse to give up. The first hearing had gone badly. I'd almost lost. But persistence and truth eventually won out. Most importantly, I learned that being betrayed by a parent doesn't define your worth. My father's cruelty revealed his character, not mine. He was the one who had to live with what he'd done. I was the one who got to move forward and build a life based on my own values. I never reconciled with my father. The restraining order eventually expired, but I never contacted him. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd sold the house and moved to another state. Good. The farther away, the better. Claire and I have a cordial but distant relationship now. Years later, she sent another apology, and I responded this time. We exchange messages on holidays, but we'll never be close again. The trust is gone. That's okay. Not every relationship can be salvaged, and that's not failure. That's just reality. My business with Marcus thrived. We expanded to a second city. We hired more workers. We made enough money to live comfortably and save for the future. But more than the financial success, I was proud of what we built together. A company based on honesty and integrity. We treated our workers fairly. We did quality work. We kept our promises. Everything my father had never done. I'm at peace now. Not because I got revenge, but because I refused to let his abuse define me. I fought back. I found justice. I built a new life, surrounded by people who actually care about me. That's the real victory. Not the money, not the court judgment, but the fact that I survived, I persevered, and I came out stronger. Some people will always try to tear you down to make themselves feel powerful. Some people will always choose manipulation over honesty. But you don't have to let them win. You can fight back. You can find your people. You can build something better. That's what I did. And if you're going through something similar, know that it's possible to come out the other side. It's hard. It's painful. But it's possible. You just have to refuse to give up. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Maybe a family member, a close friend, or a partner. How did you handle it? Did you fight back or walk away? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know there are others out there who need to hear that they're not alone. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they're not the only ones dealing with family betrayal and financial abuse. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories. And share this video with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who's going through something similar and needs to know that survival is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was long and painful in parts, but I hope it gave you something valuable. Whether that's hope, validation, or just the knowledge that justice can happen even when everything seems lost. Take care of yourselves. Protect your boundaries. Trust your instincts. And remember that your worth isn't defined by the people who betray you. It's defined by how you respond, how you rebuild, and who you choose to become after the worst happens. I'll see you in the next one.